Hey guys, it's Tony and Joey from Vulcan Motorworks.
This is our video on how to replace the valve cover breather hose on the E34 M5 3.6 liter.
It used to be NLA until now. Come along with us. We ran into this issue last year on our 400,000 kilometer E34 M5 project, where we sealed up all the vacuum leaks on the intake except this one. We thought no big deal, right? A small little hose, how hard could it be to find? It wasn't until we realized that there was no stock globally of this part. BMW doesn't have it, no stock in their German warehouses, no overstock in the States or anywhere. We thought this can't be, so we decided to make our own. Remanufacturing a one-to-one reproduction of a random air hose wasn't exactly easy, but with lots of hard work and prototypes, we feel we got it just right. The hose is made of NBR rubber, just like the original BMW hose, and is qualified to SAE J20 Class B. The great thing about the installation of this hose is that it can actually be installed with the intake plenum still on the car, and only needs very basic hand tools to put on. Although having a wider variety of tools makes the job easier, you could actually install it using just the tools in the trunk toolkit. That is, if yours are still there. We find using a flexible hose clamp tool that has a fixed 6mm on the end is life-saving when working on any BMW. First, loosen the two 10mm nuts holding the airbox in and unplug the mass airflow sensor and disconnect it from the intake boot.
Now is a good time to inspect this boot for cracks. They do crack usually around this inner edge here, and they are still available, but not cheap.
Here's a closer look at where the air hose connects on the car. At the bottom end, it connects under the intake plenum to the oil separator, and on the top it connects to the valve cover. Here's just a closer look at that flexible hose clamp tool I mentioned earlier. We're not sponsored or anything, we just like to show off a useful tool when we find one. On our site, you also have the option to buy 2 new clamps when ordering the hose. A lot of the times, the old ones can be seized and stuck after years of not sitting. You don't have to buy them, you could just buy the hose separately, but we wanted to make these available to you so that you could buy a complete kit when servicing your M5. Here's the clamp at the valve cover side. I like to put my finger behind the clamp when removing it so it doesn't spin out of place. This here is one of the more challenging parts of the job. The old hose can be so dry and stuck onto the valve cover, so you may have to pry and wedge it off with a screwdriver and even tap it down to free it. But don't be discouraged if yours is really stuck. With a little bit of persuasion, it'll come off.
Now you gotta be careful just not to drop the clamp. It's like playing Operation. It's gonna fall, the clamp.
It fell. We'll get it back.
If the hose clamp does fall off and you think you've lost it, check between the starter and the block. That's where it always falls.
Alright, so we got the old hose out. Here's the new hose. Just want to give you guys a quick comparison. First of all, just how hard this hose is. So they typically crack mostly on the valve cover side. If you can see there, this one is splitting and it's super tough to squeeze. You can see if we bend it, hardly bends at all. R1, obviously very, very soft, brand new, easily bendable. And we'll just compare the dimensions for you guys right here. So it's a 1-to-1 reproduction of this no longer available hose. So now you might be asking, why go through all the trouble to make this silly hose? Why not just use any piece of scrap hose you have lying around and put it there? Well, believe me, we thought about this too, but we ran into 2 issues when we tried it. The first being a regular hose would always kink at this 90-degree bend and wouldn't allow for proper flow through the hose. And the second issue was more subtle than that. When taking the dimensions of the hose, the 2 ends are actually different diameters. The side at the valve cover is slightly smaller than the side at the oil separator. So when using a regular piece of hose, you would always have one side that doesn't fit properly, which is just another point for a potential air leak. So if you're buying this from our website, you have the option of placing 2 brand new made in Germany hose clamps to the cart. You don't have to, you can buy just the hose, but a lot of the times these are corroded, seized, and it's really cheap just to replace them. What I like to do to make my life easier is I like to snug these on the hose before installation. And the best way to reach the hose clamps once it's installed the car is if you look at it like a J, I like to add the top side, which is the valve cover side, with the clamp this way, so we can reach it from this side, and the bottom side at the oil separator this way, so it's also very easily accessible. Okay, so I have these hose clamps on. I have them just barely snug down, so you can see they're still loose, they still totally move, but I can spin this thing around and they're not dropping. The installation of the hose is just as straightforward as the removal. Make sure to route the new hose properly in the same way you remove the original one, as if you don't, it can interfere with the throttle mechanism. It takes a bit of patience to slide the hose over the valve cover, as there isn't much room for your hands, so we recommend to gently use a flat screwdriver or pry tool to seat it all the way down. Tighten the hose clamp down and do the same for the oil separator side. Reinstall the intake boot, making sure it seats fully over the plenum. And last but not least, install the air box the same way you took it out. All right, you guys, we hope you enjoyed the video. That was us installing our new Vulcan hose on the E34 M5.
The install was not too bad. There's definitely some finicky parts, but you can do it with the intake plenum in the car, which is cool. And you can basically do it with just normal hand tools, so not too bad.
These are available for order on our website now, and it's linked down below. Thanks.